Okay. Okay, I'm live. Oh my goodness. I live in New Orleans. The houses are old. All right. Okay, perfect. So I don't go live on YouTube much, but I'm figuring it out. And let's also go live over here on Instagram. Today's topic is long awaited, and I am discussing how the bleep did I end up in a cult. Um, let's see. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Give me a second. N-A. I don't type really fast, so there's that. And I'm going to wipe off this camera over here on YouTube because I don't want y'all to get a blurred experience. All right. Give me 1 second. Have my handy dandy sweater. All right. Perfect. That's much better. Okay. And we are also going live over here on IG. Hello, hello, everyone. Greetings, 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 greetings. I hope y'all are well. I am well. I had a little charcuterie platter sitting out here, and as you can see, the flies in New Orleans are savages. So that's that on that. I am live on both YouTube and Instagram. Yes, I did stay up the other night with all of the shenanigans and press this hair out, and y'all see what New Orleans humidity. I live inside of a humidifier. Y'all see what it's doing to my hair. Okay. So, you know, that there we are. I think it's cute still. We gonna live with it. Popcorn ready? Listen, y'all. For those of you who have been around a while, you know that this conversation is a long time coming. I still don't know if I'm ready to have it, but here we are, and we gonna have it. So that's just that on that. I am Yaya. For those of you who are new here, I'm Yaya Smith. I think that it's only appropriate with us having this conversation about how I walked away from a cult and all of that for me to tell y'all both of my names. My legal name is Jasmine, and you will come to know me as Jazz because that is my stage name as well. And I'm moving into singing and all of that, so I don't want nobody to be confused. And for the last 14 years, I have gone by Yaya. Um, which has its own story, and that really has nothing. I mean, it kind of does, but we'll get into it a little bit later with the whole cult thing. So, and most of you have met me within that time frame. I have been coaching and a life coach and business coach for the last 10 years, and so you definitely met me within that time frame. If you met me as a life coach, if you met me doing business in that way. I know I have lots of folks who just know me in real life, so y'all know, y'all have always known Jazz, but yeah, not everybody has. So I'm on YouTube today, and I'm also on Instagram. So if you are getting any static, any hiccups, any issues on either platform, just switch over to the other one. I will leave this up. My husband asked me today, am I sharing this finally as a way for me? Is it because I need to get something off of my chest? Is it because I need to share my truth? And it's not that. I have plenty of spaces, safe spaces in my life where I'm able to communicate, where I'm able to say how I feel, where I'm able to get things out. So I am not sharing this because I need to publicly heal it. Um, I will keep it up and I will continue to share the story because I know that in religious spaces, there are people who feel in their soul that they have outgrown that space and they stay. And they don't have narratives or people who are telling the story of what it is like to listen to that calling on your soul that says, this is not it anymore. Um, and I looked when I left that space, and I would say even up until today, like literally this morning, I have looked and looked and looked for people who are talking about leaving organized religion and boldly stepping into the spiritual journey, the truth of the spiritual journey. And it's so rare to find that conversation being had. Very much like when I started Feminine Success, which was the Inspired Life at that time, it was so rare to hear Black women talking about femininity. Um, and so I started the conversation. And so I guess here I am again, starting a needed conversation. It is not something I feel ready for, again, like I say, but I mean, here I am. Here we are. So you may be in that space where you don't feel ready to say what needs to be said or do what needs to be done, but the ground is fertile. Your life is fertile and ready. The rain has come and it is raining. and and you are not planting the seeds that you know that you're supposed to plant, doing the work that you know you're supposed to do. And so even if you don't feel ready, do it. And I hope I can be an example of that. So today's conversation is, how the bleep did I end up in a cult? I think it's so important to have this conversation right now because we are seeing a revolution in the religion space. And that is a highly feminine thing. I have been saying for years that y'all are going to see these institutions fall apart. And that as we talk about the rise of the feminine, it's not just going to be rainbows and butterflies and flowers and Bridgerton. It is going to be a complete destruction and renewal and rebirth of the systems that we need to navigate society as humanity. Um, and what we are seeing now with the church falling apart, with educational institutions falling apart, with all of these systems falling apart, is the other side of the rise of the feminine. So I also felt like this conversation was important because sometimes we feel like, oh, I could never end up in that kind of a situation. I know I'm that person who says, oh, I could never, that could never be me. Oh, I would never. I'm too much of a thinker. I'm too much of a seeker. I'm too smart. Oh, you can't get one over on me. I have great discernment. And two things that I'll say about that. One is, even smart people end up in stupid situations sometimes. Okay. Even smart people end up in crazy situations. It happens to the best of us. Sometimes it comes to teach you a lesson. Sometimes it comes to um, bring you a blessing, bring you a relationship that you would not have had otherwise. And the other part of that is, you cannot discern your way out of your destiny. You can't discern your way out of your destiny. And so often we think that we are only destined, that divinity and divine things mean that we are only destined to experience good things, positive things. And sometimes it is your destiny to experience disappointment, disaster, distress. And yes, it can lead you to other things, but sometimes that's just a part of the journey and there's something in there for you. So anybody can end up in a crazy situation. Um, And that part of the conversation needs to be had, because yes, we can be too smart to end up in crazy things. And I think that I know that we were too smart to get too deep, but that was something, there were things there that we needed to learn. And I'm not having this conversation to say that I regret the experience. Um, but I am having this conversation to say that you can stay in a thing too long, you can stay in a place too long, because it provides a sense of comfort, because it speaks to parts of you that you're not tending to, or that you are wounded, or that need care. And you can stay there too long, even if it's a good thing. There's a time and a place for everything, and there's a time and a place to let things go. So what I do regret personally is staying too long. I regret not getting the message, not getting the lesson, and moving on, and believing that I would make God angry, and all of those other things that come along with religion. So yes, I wanted to kind of frame it there, because this is not meant to be kind of a tea spilling drag of a conversation. It really is meant to shine a light on your path. Now, if some tea gets spilled in the interim, it is what it is. I'm a believer in clean your kitchen, so you don't have teacups sitting all around to get spilled. But that's neither here nor there. um, so I wanted to frame it there, so that, it is not creating this kind of space where people feel like they need to defend their organization and all of this, because this ain't that. And that's not needed. It's not needed here. So how did I end up in a cult? I was, first of all, raised Christian. I was raised in two of the top Black churches in Louisiana. And so I always had a biblical foundation that I could remember. Prior to, in my very young years, like my daughter's age, she's 5, by the way, I was raised by my grandmother, who is not a church going woman, but she's a very spiritual woman. She is a woman who reads Psalms in and out, up and down. She is a very nature centered woman, and a very loving and caring woman. So I had these two kind of foundations that were very spiritual and very rooted in God. So that was my upbringing up until about 15. At 15, my parents divorced, and that was very difficult. I'm going to take my glasses off because it's hot and sweaty and they're like sliding. My parents divorced when I was 15, and we moved to Florida, and my mother decided that she wanted to practice Jehovah's Witness. And that was my first rebellion against church. Because prior to that, I loved church. I went to Christian private schools. Like, my whole life was rooted in God in some way. All of my aunts, uncles, everybody went to church with us. It was a thing. Um, and in those Christian schools, I will say I am a Scorpio, and I am, as I grow, I'm realizing how that kind of shapes my personality. I have always questioned. Always, always, always. I am a quadruple Scorpio at that. And I have always questioned everything. I am going to question it. Make it make sense to me. And I'm not questioning it to rebel, but I'm questioning it to make sure that whoever is guiding or leading me knows what the bleep they're talking about, knows where the bleep they're going. Okay. So from childhood, I've always been this questioning child. And in my home, it was encouraged. In my schools, it wasn't encouraged, but I had some teachers who were willing to kind of go there with me. So it wasn't, I was not ostracized for being a questioner. So that was my upbringing. I did not end up in this religious cult space, just kind of stumbling there. But at 16, when my mom decided to go the Jehovah's Witness route because of, her own situation, the messaging and the way that the message was presented was completely off to me, and it rang all of my physical alarms. I have always been a very intuitive person. My body speaks to me. I can see, I can hear, I know, and I knew it was not right for me. And I can say now, as a mom, that can be a little difficult dealing with a child who, you as a parent feel like it's your duty, you're the authority, it's your job to guide this child where they're supposed to go in life. And this child is like, no, I know that is not right for me, so I'm not doing it. So that was 16. And things got really tumultuous for me after that. They were tumultuous for me before. They got even more tumultuous after that. My mom was dealing with being divorced, and we were in a new city. It was completely, Jacksonville and New Orleans are totally different. Katrina had hit. There was so much going on at the time. And I saw my authority figure, my parent, be off her square. And so because of that, I decided at 16 that I was like, I got this. I'm good. I'll figure it out. And then by 17, I was out on my own. My mom and I just could not figure it out, and so I was out on my own. And my dad and I couldn't figure it out either. I graduated high school with my dad, and I was out on my own. My dad was not very religious either. So I kind of went from my mom, who at the time she did Jehovah's Witness, then she did some other fellowship, and she was kind of hopping around, to my dad, who was just like workaholic. And neither of those situations fit. So fast forward, I from 17 to 19 ish was out living life, figuring things out, being an adult. And then at 21, at 20, I got pregnant. And because of my upbringing, I was always the girl who believed, I was raised in purity culture. I believed that I was going to go to college, find a husband, get married, have children, the planned trajectory that they give you. And I'm a person who tends to keep my word to myself. And so when I did not live up to that, I was with a boyfriend. I thought that we were going to be married. And because of that religious training, I was willing to put up with whatever to make sure that I married this guy that I was dating and living with and shacking up and all these things. And then I got to a point where I just couldn't anymore, and he wouldn't. And so we were like, it is what it is, but I was pregnant. And I start there in the story because when people ask, how did I end up in a cult? I could go right to, oh, my husband, his friend introduced us to this knowledge. And then we kind of started digging deeper and we fell into the rabbit hole. But if you know me at all, first of all, you know I'm very transparent. And you also know that I like to get to the root of things. is, even with my clients, when I'm coaching my clients, they get such good results because they go back to the root of, why am I making this choice? Why am I repeating this pattern? What is at the root of this? And then you're able to pull it up at the root so you don't do it again. And so what I realized, and why I start the conversation there with me getting pregnant, and me feeling like, oh my goodness, you have made God angry. Like, look at your life, look at what you've done to your life, all of this is because the organization that we were a part of, one of their major tools for recruitment, and I know folks who are part of that organization who are watching right now are going to disagree, but that's you. More light on your journey. One of their major tools for recruitment is shame. Shame is such a huge tool, and not just them, but across the spectrum of organized religion, shame is one of the ways that they connect with you first, with um the pieces or the parts of your story that you are ashamed of. So this organization specifically connects with, look at how fractured the Black family is, look at Black women, look at Black men, look at the Black community, look at Hispanics. We are at the bottom because we're not following God's laws, which you can go wherever you want to go with that conversation. But what is at the root of that conversation is shame. And someone said that's a powerful emotion to play on. It absolutely is. And shame is so deeply rooted that you can play that fiddle, you can play that one string for years. And through playing that one string, you can influence people to put up with just about anything to escape those feelings of shame, to escape the things that they're ashamed of. And so I challenge you, if you are in that space, to figure out where your shame is and nurture and heal that part of you so that you are able to make more informed decisions. I'm not telling you to leave your organization or anything like that, because there may be other work that is destined for you to do there. But are you there because you know that you're meant to be there? Or are you there because you are ashamed to walk away? Because you are ashamed of who you are outside of that space. All right. So they always include a little bit of truth into the equation. Yes, absolutely. And shame is a truth. That's why it's so easy to play that string, because it is a truth. It is not that they're telling you something that isn't real. They're telling you something that's real. The truth of the matter is, though, that you can choose a different emotion to attach to that story, and it doesn't have to be shame. So I see folks asking what organization. Out of respect, and just general not caring for controversy in that way, many times these organizations will call themselves out. So if they happen to, great. If not, also great. But what I will say is that the denomination was Hebrew Israelite, which is a version of Christianity, whether they want to admit that or not. It is a version of fundamentalist Christianity, that follows, or that presents themselves as a group that teaches and follows the letter of the law to the letter. That is the presentation, and for the most part, until you see, that is what you'll see. Until you decide that you're going to look deeper, what you'll see is we follow the commandments. That's it. Um, and what ends up happening when you decide to look deeper, when you start to ask questions, is that you're told that you are sowing discord, that you are out of the spirit, that you're basically above your pay grade. But I am a firm knower that when it comes to my spiritual walk, when it comes to your spiritual walk, nothing is above your pay grade. It is your responsibility to know who is teaching you and what they're rooted in. Period. Um, let's see. That's a tough one. My son joined that one and left before he turned Islamic. And personally, and this is just my personal uh, I am in a place of exploration, and allowing myself to truly explore and not feel like I need something to give me a place, to give me a structure, to give me an order. And I think as humanity, we're going to need to all get to the place where we find the light within and we nurture and cultivate that. Um, because when we give that power to outside structures, power corrupts. And that's just the truth. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what I have noticed in many of these organized religious spaces is that there is not an accountability structure in place for the people who are leading you, the people who are guiding you, the people who are in that top brass role. So, blessings to your son. I hope that he finds what he is looking for sure. I do believe that they all have a little piece of the truth. So I pray that he finds the piece that he's looking for there and is able to trust himself enough to continue on his journey. Um, Tashia says, Tashiana, is that your name, Tashiana? Yes, you should be allowed to ask questions and get answers. That's what makes your faith stronger. Exactly. I'm and I'm a question. I question my parents. So a religious leader is not above being questioned. Okay, not in my book at least. And in those spaces, the common conversation is because it's a man, because this is a man, you should be quiet. You should not ask questions. And you gonna have to give me something more than that. Okay, at least know what you're talking about. Goodness. So um that was the frame of my upbringing and what kind of led me to that space. The time frame that we were there, someone asked, what was the time frame? So for us, it was 8 years. It was 2011 through 2019. um and those were kind of pivotal years because all my babies were born during that time. Well, most of my babies were born during that time. As a woman, I was coming into my own beliefs. I was figuring out marriage. All of that was happening during that time. And so much of that has changed since 2019. In the 4 years, I would say the quantum level of growth that I've experienced in the last 4 years leapfrogged over the previous 8 years significantly. Not to take away anything from those previous 8 years, because that was pivotal to my journey. I would not take it back. Like I said, I would have not stayed as long. That's the thing. But I'm going to answer some of y'all's questions because y'all have been asking great questions. I do have an order in which I'm going to follow this story. Today, I really just wanted to kind of set up the scene, talk about my backstory, my upbringing, and the emotions, how I made the decision, what led me there. So I'm going to get a little bit more into that as we continue the conversation. Hello to everyone who is just joining us. For those of you who are just popping on, I am Yaya Smith. I am the founder of Feminine Success. I am a mom of four amazing children. And today I am finally having a conversation that has been almost 5 years in the making. How I ended up in a religious cult is how I'm starting the story. But the overall trajectory and the journey that we're going on over this series, because it's going to have to come in parts, is my journey to spiritual freedom, my journey to knowing God for myself, going from the place where I'm a firm believer in God and believer in whatever have you, to where I know that I know, and I also know what I don't know. And I'm okay with both of those realities and both of those truths. So we talked about how smart people end up in cults. And really, it's because a lot of times cults appeal to people who are thinkers, who are seekers, who are not just taking society and these institutions, who are not just taking what school tells you, what church tells you, what the government tells you, what all of these people tell you for face value. And so people say, oh, well, this isn't for smart people. I do a lot of research on cults and the occults and esoteric things and all of these things. Quadruple Scorpio, once again, for those of you who are just popping on. But every single one of them has appealed to smart people in society. Every single one has appealed to doctors, people who have seen the inside or the underbelly, and who are like, no, I don't agree with it, I'm walking away from it, or whatever have you. So don't think, oh, I'm too smart to end up in that kind of situation, because we are all being programmed in one way, shape, or form. And whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you're aware, whatever, something is programming you. And many times cults can appeal to the sense of autonomy that we desire, where we feel like I am choosing this for myself. So yeah, and truthfully, for those who are, I'm not going to go deep into this conversation because I don't want to ruffle too many feathers. But the only difference between a religion and a cult is longevity. One has lasted thousands of years, and one probably just got started a couple decades ago. But if it lasts long enough, it will be a religion. In the future, we can see Apple becoming a religion right now. We can see Coca-Cola. There are people who, I was talking to somebody the other day who literally, she was like, oh girl, I'm so thirsty. We were in the store, we were shopping. And she's like, oh girl, I'm so thirsty. Goes to get a drink at the fountain and comes back, oh, never mind, it's Pepsi products, I'm not buying that. Like, so there are cultural religions as well. And the only real difference is that one has lasted longer and one has been accepted by the mainstream, generally through means of oppression. All of really the mainstream religions that we can point to have been accepted in the mainstream through persecution, through red rum, through pillaging their land, through conquest. These are not things that we chose. These are things that were forced upon us. And so cult-like behavior is pervasive in society. We naturally seek community. We naturally seek acceptance. We naturally seek the safety and certainty of feeling like, oh, they have the blueprint. Oh, this is the right thing to do. This is the right way to go. We naturally seek means to avoid disaster. And groups can feel like that. Groups can feel like a layer of protection, which they are. And so smart people end up in these situations all the time, y'all, because we're all human. Okay. Creative says, Creative Ache says, right, because Apple folks clear up and down. They are superior, smarter, richer, etc. Listen, I'm not going to give the Apple folks too much because I'm an Apple folks. Now, I don't say that I'm smarter than anybody else, but I am totally like I don't know how to use other phones and other equipment. It's a strange thing, okay? So, y'all, this frizz is doing a lot, but we going to live with it. Okay. Honey L says the one that I was a part of made me feel chosen and appealed to the sense of the truth. You know what? That is absolutely true. For me, one of the things when I was thinking about, this conversation, I said to myself, a cult never presents itself as a cult. One of the questions that y'all asked was, does this group identify as a cult? Now, these days, it depends on who you ask, because nowadays they've heard people call them a cult so much that they're like, well, yeah, we're a cult. Everybody's in a cult. Everything is a cult. Cult, cult, cult. They're trying to spin it. And as a business person, I have my own ideas around if you need to spin it, question it. But that's neither here nor there. Do it. Do your own research. But they do not technically identify themselves as a cult, right? They technically identify as a nonprofit organization or church that teaches the commandments. That's how they identify. And they teach their people to keep the commandments. They travel the world, they build schools and locations all over the world, teaching folks to keep the commandments. And that's how they identify. And so cults don't present themselves as cults, they present themselves as answers to societal problems. And there were a lot of questions that I was asking myself at the time that this information was presented to me that were being answered by the information that was being presented to me. And because the answers were coming through a vehicle that was familiar to me, which was the Bible, I was all in. I was like, yes, this is it. We go back to the shame of me feeling like, well, look at what you've done to your life by doing it your way, by, whatever have you. You need some type of order, structure, XYZ. And it was coming through a person that I trusted. So the information that the Hebrew Israelites teach came to me through a person who at the time was my friend, a very close friend at the time, who is now my husband. Um, he was getting the information from a friend of his. Now, here's where my first red flag came in. Okay. So, yes, I was getting this information from my husband, but he was getting this information from a friend of his who was getting it from like a cousin or something like that. When I met the person who was giving him the information, while the information was ringing all kinds of bells in my mind, like Honey L mentioned, it was making me say, why is it that Black people are in this position? Why is it that brown people, no matter where we are in the world, we're the most gifted, we're the most talented, we're the hardest working, we're the this, we're the that, but we are finding ourselves at the bottom of society globally? What is happening? That question was being answered in a way that said, well, you read the Bible, don't you? Well, have you seen this part of the Bible? Well, did you know this? Well, and it was feeding my need to answer that question. And it was feeding a lot of people's need to answer that question. So yes, it did go to this kind of, you are chosen. That's why you're so good at everything. That's why you dominate every industry. That's why you are, the smartest. If we look at all the children who are graduating college at 12 years old, they're brown children. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then the conversation was, and you're at the bottom of society because you are not doing what God said to do. And so it felt like an equation. It felt like, well, 1 + 1 = 2. And so I kind of was like, okay, let me follow this thread of information. And there were prophecies that were aligning and scriptures that were aligning and all of these different things that, yes, I had the Jehovah's Witness moment in my teenage years had seriously moved me away from the idea of like white Jesus and revelations and all of that, but I was never away from God, and I never fully let go of the Bible. And so it brought me back to the Bible in a way that I had never read it before. So I was like, okay, maybe let me follow this thread of information. But then I met the person who was giving my husband all of this information. And I met his wife. I met his wife, and or at the time it was his girlfriend. And immediately my internal signals were like, something is not right here. He was full of knowledge and information. He was very charismatic. He was very just a lot, a lot. But something was off. I spent a lot of time alone with his wife. And as a person who is very intuitive, I can feel people. Very empathic. I can feel people. I don't care how much you smile. I don't care how beautifully your makeup is done or any of that. And it's not something that I can control. It's just not. And I wish I could, because a lot I can tell when people can when they don't want me to see them or feel them, and I'm like, girl, mm, mm. But the way that they were, I immediately asked my husband, who was then we were in this kind of courtship phase. I immediately asked him, is that what you're looking for? Like, are you expecting that in a wife? Because it was a situation where, and people have their own feelings about these things. My father, when he was alive, was a man who was very misogynistic. Just I'm not gonna romanticize it at all. My dad was a very misogynistic man. And he felt like women were to be seen and not heard. Women were supposed to be pretty and put together and, speak when spoken to. A man is supposed to, he was very much a provider, very much a man is supposed to take care of you, provide for you, protect you, and all those things. But in exchange for that, you shut up and do what that man is telling you to do, period. And I saw that in that situation. And I was like, well, that is not going to be me. So is that what you're looking for? And he was like, no, that's not what I'm looking for at all. I wouldn't expect that from you. And he never has. But that is the culture within that fundamentalist version of Christianity that calls themselves Hebrew Israelites. And yes, they're like, this is a bloodline, this is a heritage, this is who we are as a people. I totally get it. And at the same time, a lot of it is dogma and religion. Even if you're going to say this is our culture, many of the things are not culture. They are convoluted, they are oppressive, and they are coming from, if we're going to call a spade, they are coming from something, a document that has been stepped on, that has been flipped and turned upside down many, many times throughout history. Um, and we cannot, for me, I can't say what you can do, but for me, the cognitive dissonance that is required to ignore the fact that things have been added and taken away, that the book has been written and rewritten, that war and red rum and many other things have been justified under this banner. And to say, well, you got to take the bad with the good, you got to take the good with the bad. I just couldn't live with it in my spirit anymore. Um, and that humanity is going to have to get to that point for us to truly heal, because we have passed the point where we can improve these systems. They need to be completely eliminated and rebirthed from something pure. We are constantly trying to put lipstick on a pig, and it's just not working. Um, and so when I saw that, that was my first red flag. They were very young. We were very young at the time. My husband and I married. I was 23 years old. He was 27. So we were all very young, and this was happening. And I was like, I just don't. It's just not given, healthy. So we actually eventually went our separate ways. They went and studied on their own, and we went in the direction of the organization that we eventually left. Um, so yeah, that's kind of up until the point of us joining the cult, how we got there. I will say, let me clarify, because being a member of this particular cult is a process. It is, there's like documentation and all of that. So we never were official members, but there was a time where you could congregate with them, you could go to their events, you could study with them online on Sabbaths, without being an official member. And so we were around during that time. And then when the big scandal of 2019 happened, they stopped allowing that. They stopped allowing people who were outsiders to, but who believed and who kept the commandments and who, whatever have you, to participate. But yes, did you have to pay to join? You did not have to pay to join necessarily, but you do have to pay tithes, just like in any other church or organization. And there, so I'll get to, in the next episode, I'm going to talk about taking the good with the bad and like how people stay in these kinds of situations. And I'll talk about some of the things that were happening that were like, oh, this is insane. One of them was, there is a guilt trip that happens at the end of every class. There was one specific leader within the organization who they would have come on at the end of class and do kind of like when you're in the Christian church, there's the altar call, the benediction. There's offering. You can go up and bring your offering, or you can go up and get saved. You can join or whatever have you. There was the same kind of process there. And there would be this kind of laying it on thick guilt trip to tithe, to give, to, you can buy this and buy that and do this and do that, but you're not giving. And it was a lot. But you did not have to pay initially to join. There was kind of a financial barrier, because to congregate, you did have to wear specific garments. As women, like, you had to wear certain colors and things like that. So there were certain financial barriers that were in place, but not necessarily to join. Tashiana says a process documentation. Yes, like there was the expectation that you would change your name, which is how I ended up with the name Yaya, which is short for Yazara. There was the expectation of you cutting off your worldly friends and family. you had to, like, the men have to take tests to ascend. There's a hierarchy. It's a lot. It's a very, at this point, it's a very large organization. When we joined, it was not. There was one school. It was in New York. If you were not in New York, you studied online. And then the second school opened in Florida, and it was very small. It was very home based. It it did not, it was not the it wasn't the global organization that it is now, at that time. And one of the things that kept us there was seeing the growth and progress happen in real time. um, and there is a point where growth is divine and growth is ordained, and there becomes a point where things grow uncontrolled, and uncontrolled growth is cancer. That's just what it is. um, where there are no checks and balances, where there are, we're going to get to the scandal of 2019, which is what caused us to finally completely cut ties. It was extortion, it was unaliving, it was kidnapping, there was a lot that went on in 2019 that I was like, I don't care who says what or who feels like what. I gotta go. Um, because while that relationship of the couple that kind of gave us the information initially was my first red flag, I had many red flags along the way. And we learned under this group for 8 years. But I knew, someone asked in the question box earlier, when did you know that it was time for you to cut ties? I knew at year 4 that I was done. And more than likely, the inkling came upon me before that. But by year 4, I started to completely feel like I was not being edified at all. When information is new and it's like, okay, I'm getting it, I'm learning it, it's great. But then when you get to a point where you realize that it's just information and not implementation, and you are not seeing tangible change in your life, or the lives of the people who are in this space. And you're being told, well, you just need to do it longer. Well, you just need to keep going. Well, you're not studying enough, or whatever have you. Where all we're doing is talking about the problem, and we're not talking about the solutions. We're not talking about the answers. And like I said before, I've always been a questioner. Personally, if you are telling me 1 + 1 = 2, and this is how we got to this problem, this is why we are at the bottom, this is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing as a people, and all of these things, and you're telling me that you have the solution, then if the punishment has been tangible, the rewards need to also be tangible. And I'm not saying it needs to be money or it needs to be anything, but I cannot tell you the amount of people that I came across within that space who were depressed, whose families were falling apart, the amount of leaders who were caught in adultery, who their wives were unhappy, their children were completely breaking away. And this is not to say that these things can't just naturally happen, or that correlation equals causation per se. But this is to say that you will know a tree by its fruit. And there's only so many times you can see the same situation play out and get worse and worse every time before you realize this is some rotten fruit coming off of a rotten tree, and nobody is addressing the roots. They're just telling you, oh, look at those flowers that we planted over there. Oh, look at the grapes that we have over here. Oh, look at this over. Don't look at this tree. Don't worry about the tree. Don't worry about that. And I just, again, I could not live with the cognitive dissonance required to ignore the glaring red flags. Honey L said, it has also taught me to never be so dogmatic about a thing. I totally agree. I totally agree. because I was raised in the church, there is a part of me that is comforted by dogma. There is a part of me that is comforted by feeling like, if I just pray, if I just am right enough, if I just do right enough, if I just, there is a part of me that reaches for that comfort and that can be swayed by the level of security that those kinds of spaces can portray. But the more that I live, I constantly say, the more that I live, the less I judge. The more I live, the less um, rigid I am becoming, which is great because I am a fixed person. But the more I live, the more I am trusting God rather than just feeling like I need to prove my belief in God. So I hope that makes sense. But someone said, "What is your birth name?" Jasmine. Jasmine, don't I look like a Jasmine? Which is so interesting. Before I even came into this walk, I always wanted to change my name because my name was not given to me intentionally. My mom did not like choose to name me Jasmine. She was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." A nurse in the hospital was like, "Oh, she looks like a Jasmine," and that became my name. And I always felt like I am such a different kind of personality. I am so just not like the others that Jasmine felt too common. Um, I know, y'all. I think this will be the series where y'all like get to know my personality a little bit more. But yes, Jasmine felt too common. So I always wanted to change my name to like Jazara. Um, and when my husband and I kind of came into this new knowledge, he was like, "Well, there's no J in the Hebrew." So, and I was like, "Well, I guess Yazara," and I went with it. Let's see. Post op princess says, "Are these the people that protest on the corner wearing purple? I'm in Florida and I see them often." Well, since you're so specific, ma'am, and for them, what I will say, for all Hebrew Israelite groups, they're not protesting. They're not protesting. They may be protesting against like society, but they are teaching. They are going to where they're going into the highways and byways, as the Bible says, to do. Let's see. Chantel says, "Thank you for your transparency. Love this." You're welcome, Chantel. It's so good to see you. Um, Jasmine Easter says, "Oh my God, my mom didn't choose mine either. She said it just came out of nowhere and thought it was just okay." Same. That is so interesting. Your daughter's name is Jazara. That is a beautiful way to spell that. Um, okay, let me see. I saw someone ask earlier, what would Jesus do? And honestly, um, Jesus would not join a cult. Jesus came tearing all that down. Honestly, if we're being totally honest, and I actually got into a conversation yesterday. A good friend or a person that I follow for a while, and we kind of know each other through the online space, posted and asked. She is on her spiritual religious deconstruction journey, and she is deconstructing Christianity. And she posted and asked, regardless of what you believe now, when did you stop identifying as a Christian? And again, I have always been very much a questioner, and my Mercury, which is the way that we think and communicate, is also in Scorpio. So I am very cut to the chase, very let's get right to the root of the matter, let's get right to the heart of the matter, even in the way that I think. And when I realized at 16 that Christ was not a Christian, I stopped calling myself a Christian. And while I know for sure that I exemplify Christ like behaviors and all of that, and I have no problem with modeling my life after Christ, um, Christianity did not exist in Christ's time. And I do not believe that Christ would call himself a Christian if he were alive today. And I don't believe he would join any of the offshoots of Christianity, including um, any of them. I don't even have to name them, all of them. Um, Groupthink was not something that Christ exemplified. Following the leader just because they have fashioned themselves a leader is not something that Christ exemplified. Christ actually spent a lot of time alone. Christ actually spent a lot of time examining his own spiritual walk and own spiritual journey. And so, that's what Jesus would do if I were asked that question. Um, let's see how true, and you never identify with them being a cult until after you get out. That's very, very true. um Honey L says, but they ostracize you. Stay away from the internet, stay away from worldly people, i.e. anyone that will help you see the light. That is also very true. The second red flag for me, after seeing some of the relationships, because y'all know, if you've been around for any amount of time, I am a lover of relationships. Talking about cults, in my opinion, is talking about relationships. You are talking about your relationship to authority. You are talking about your relationship to power. You're talking about your relationship to yourself and your own emotions. Talking about work-life balance, talking about business, talking about being in the corporate space, talking about marriage. All of it is relationships, in my opinion. And so that relationship part stood out to me first. The second thing, though, that stood out to me was being told not to think, not to study, not to dig deeper, because these other things were corrupted. Because they're going to get you off of your journey to the kingdom, your journey to God, your journey to righteousness, your journey to the truth of truth. Um, Being told, don't study the Hebrew, don't look into the Greek, don't um, look into who in the world King James was and what his stances were politically, societally. When you're told not to dig deeper, that is also a red flag. And so that was one of the things that stopped me from full on joining the body or the ministry, or they call themselves the body, but that's what stopped me from full on joining them. Let's see. Did you give up on the entire way of life over the negative experience with that one group? No, I did not give up on the entire way of life. What I will say is that I started to investigate my why. I started to ask myself, is this true for me? Is this real? Or is this something that I am doing because I'm afraid? Is this something that I am believing in because I think that if I don't believe in it, I'm going to go to hell, or I'm going to separate myself from God, or all that, all the dogma. So I started to critically analyze a lot more when I walked away from the group. Have I given up on the way of life? I still honor the Sabbath because I need rest. I'm not keeping the Sabbath because I feel like God is going to punish me if I don't keep the Sabbath. I am still keeping the dietary law of not eating pork because I stopped eating pork probably a decade before I found out what a Hebrew Israelite even was. I had in home ec class, like some teacher came and showed us the fat content in pork, and it grossed me out, and I just never ate pork from that moment on. So that is something that I'm keeping because of my own understanding of health and wellness and how pigs operate and what's in their skin and all of that. I am analyzing and not just saying I'm going to go along with it because someone's image of God told me that I should. And I am okay with that. It took me a long time to be okay with that, because I tell you, I spent a good amount of time feeling like, oh my God, every bad thing that was happening in my life was because I left the organization and I was not studying with them anymore, and God was angry and all the, and that's y'all, when I tell you there's so much abuse happening within these organizations, a lot of the people, the most beautiful women, the woman who has 12 children, her husband is pastor such and such, and all of the, a lot of these women are experiencing some of the most oppressive conditions you can imagine. And I know this for facts. Just because they dress it up, just because they put a scripture on it, does not mean that it's a blessing. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure that I'm gathering all the questions. I don't want to jump ahead because I will go deeper into, the things that made us walk away and all of that in future episodes and parts, because this conversation, because I am not seeing any content on especially Black women reclaiming autonomy of our spiritual journeys, reclaiming our walk with God. Um, I'm going to talk about raising children in those spaces. I'm going to talk about what marriage is like in the space and outside of the space, because it hasn't been rainbows and butterflies walking away. Transformation never is, and some of that can run you right back into oppression. Think about our ancestors, for those of us who had enslaved ancestors who were freed from slavery. Slavery had been an institution for so long and had created many comforts for our ancestors that, while they were not truly comfortable, they had decided, they had adapted. So it wasn't really comfort, it was adaptation. And adapting to freedom, adapting to life when you have walked away from an order or structure or system that is providing for you, that is creating, that can be very, very difficult. And it has been very difficult for me. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy at all. I don't regret it. Again, I don't regret it. I know for sure that I'm on the journey that I'm supposed to be on, but it has not been like, oh yes, everything fell into place and I just knew it was the right decision. No, it hasn't been that. Actually, everything fell apart. I was having a conversation. One second. I was having a conversation with my sister, telling her how, cults, because she moved in with me as we were like walking away from this experience. And I was telling her, cults almost present themselves as a door into the kingdom. Okay. It's like a door into the castle, a door into this beautiful, righteous, upright experience. And then you get into them and there is no way out without being harmed in some way. So what initially looks like a castle becomes a prison. Corporate America, another version. The music industry, another version. There are various different versions of cults. Not all of them are religious, but these spaces that present themselves as a solution, that present themselves as a lifestyle change, as a transformation, as an upgrade, as an elevation, that when you get in, there is no safe way out. And what initially looks like a castle becomes a prison. And she was like, oh my goodness, that's like the princess in the castle trope. And it really is. Um, so just like Honey L was saying, they ostracize you while you're in the cult. They tell you, don't deal with any of your family. Your family is going to hell. Your family is wicked. Your friends, your old friends are wicked. They tell you this. When you decide to leave, they then make you that person who is wicked, who is going to hell, who is all these things. And that's not easy to deal with. When we decided to make it clear that we were no longer a part of the congregation and things like that, people's husbands told them to stop following me, like effective immediately, to stop dealing with me, to stop talking to me, to stop being a part of my programs, to stop taking my classes. And there was nothing that I could not go against my spirit, which is also biblical. So, I could not see that being ostracized, or I could have, but I didn't see that being ostracized and say, well, maybe I need to, well, some parts of me were saying that, but a much bigger part of me was saying it is time for you to move on. All right. So let's see. Are there any other questions? Let's see. As long as Christian means Christ follower, I'm one. Well, very much congratulations to you. I am not sure I know for sure that is not how I define Christianity. And that is not what I see of Christianity in the world. So, I have no beef with anyone who decides to label themselves or join an organization or join or follow a religion. None whatsoever. I simply require the same respect. Let's see. Disrupt her coach. Hey, Selena says, agreed. It's all about relationships, especially to self. Exactly. Melinda Margarita says, wait, are you talking about what I'm currently battling with? Listen, Melinda, I'm not sure what you're currently battling with, but feel free to shoot me a DM. I am not in the online coaching space anymore. While my courses and classes do exist in the Feminine Foundations membership, I just am, there's something bigger for me to do with my life right now. A part of it is sharing this journey with you. So I do not have like coaching around how to walk away from a cult or any of that. Feminine Foundations will, all of my old courses, classes, and things are there. You will learn how to trust yourself. You will learn to stand in your power as a woman, which will make you leave any space that's no longer serving you. But nothing specific to that. So I am like making my DMs available for those who maybe need to have the conversation, who just need to get it out, who feel like you don't have anyone to talk to about it. Yeah, I'm here for that. I may answer questions via these lives rather than going deep into it in the DMs, because my DMs can fill up very quickly, especially when I'm talking about deep stuff. But do know that there is a safe space for you, because for me, there was not really a safe space. Women who left when I left are just now starting to speak up, are just now starting to heal around it. Many of them ended up divorcing their husbands. Many of them ended up really going through some traumatic things. And so they were going through so much that there was really nowhere for me to kind of talk about it and get it out, except for with my husband, who I was going through leaving and the departure and all of that with. And then some of my friends who were also kind of like following the same lifestyle and the same walk, but had never really joined that group. We were able to kind of talk about it, but there was not online space, or people who I felt had that unbiased opinion that I could talk to, because we all were going through it in our own way. So, um, Disruptor Coach says, I've never identified with or could see myself in the KJV of the Bible, or any for that matter. And that was what drew me into this space, was that they showed me myself in the Bible. They showed me our people in the Bible, and they made it make sense for me. So like I said, my next episode will be talking about the good with the bad, because I don't want this to seem like I'm bashing them or anything like that, because I'm not. There was some good that I did not only find bad things in it. Obviously, I stayed for 8 years, but I think that a lot of us are making decisions in our lives from the place of, well, you got to take the good with the bad. Well, what is the lesser of two evils? Well, at least it's this. Well, and that is a very scarce, fearful way of navigating life. Um, so yeah. It's Janae 84. What about the ceremonial laws and feast days versus possibly returning to paganism? All of it has some paganism in it, baby. All of it. Um, I won't go too deep into it, because I do believe that you have to study and dive deeper yourself. But the Bible that we currently read is kind of like a potluck of other origin stories, uh, myths, religions, all of that. And this can be proven. So, one of the things about this group, and about every church that I have been to, that has been a red flag for me, is that when you start to bring these things up, they tell you to just trust, just believe. You just don't believe enough. You just don't trust enough. You are out of the spirit. There are so many things that come up to shame you out of asking questions. And in my knowing the truth, if it is really true, you can peel it all the way down to its very bare essence, and it will still be true. If I start peeling and you start saying, oh, don't take that off, oh, cover that back up, oh, we don't talk about that, oh, we don't, it's not true. And one of the things that I know is going to happen as I bring this series out is that there will be people who are contesting me with something that you cannot stand behind, that you know. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you believe. What do you know? And where I stand in my life right now, I know God. I don't have to believe anymore. I know. I know what is within me. I know the power that I have. I know the power that we all have. I don't know everything about it. I don't have access to it in full. I don't know everything at all. But I'm okay with not knowing what I don't know. And I'm okay with not pretending that, because this book has been passed down through thousands of years, or because this religion, or because this culture, or because this thing has lasted so long, that it is right, and that is proof that it's right, and that is proof that I should believe it, because that's where I was before. I was in this place where, well, if it wasn't true, it wouldn't have lasted this long. Well, guess what? Democracy, tyranny, totalitarianism, all these political stances that literally oppress society have also been around thousands of years. A thing can be well built and still be very toxic and unhealthy. A lie can be told for so long that everybody believes it. And guess what? That lie is still a lie, baby. It's still a lie. So, this idea that I don't believe that there is any power outside of the power of God. And if you call yourself a Bible believer, it says that in that book. The people that we call pagans were connecting to God in the ways that made sense to them in their time, in the context of their environment. It is not for me to create an us versus them paradigm. And that is, our egos crave that, y'all. Our ego feels so right about being right. And that is what religion and cults truly give us at a core level. On the other side of shame is the feeling of being proud, being proudly unashamed, being proudly righteous, being, I know what I know, what I know. And really, can you peel it all the way back? Can you peel it all the way back? If you can't, you don't know it. And that's just the truth. It's Velvet Scorpion says, it was the major different teaching in the same community that caused a lot of confusion for me. I'm not sure what you mean specifically, but you can reach out and let me know. But there were some times, where a member who was at a lower status was not treated with the same regard or respect as a leader, which is partiality according to the scripture. That was a kind of difference that I saw. Difference in teaching across the same community. When it comes to the Hebrew Israelite community as a whole, yes, there are so many. It's almost like Islam. There are various different ways to practice Islam. There are there are progressive Christians, there are New Age Christians, there are traditional Christians, there are fundamentalist Christians. There are different teachings across every faction. In this space, there are, folks who believe the Messiah. There are folks who do not believe the Messiah. There are folks who believe the Old Testament only. There are folks who are Old Testament, New Testament. There are people who believe in monogamy. There are people who believe in polygamy. There's just like a whole gamut that it can run as well. Disrupt Her Coach says Pentecostal church was like that for me. Fire and brimstone. Ooh, I know about them Pentecostals. Listen, I got a lot of religious framing in my upbringing. So my family, my grandmother was spiritual, but her sister, who they always lived very close, and we had a woman-centric family. Generations upon generations have had daughters and sisters and things like that, and then I come with boys. But her sister was apostolic, and my father's mother, her best friend, was also apostolic. So my other grandmother was also apostolic, and it was like down home red clay apostolic church. And if you know, there's a whole lot going on in the Southern church that, child. But anywho, everything was harsh, is what Selena says, shaming and going to burn in the pit of hell. I was more in tune with the divine when I followed my intuition. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's Alicia Christine says, we are here reclaiming my time. Exactly. That I think is one of the things that my husband struggles with, is the time that he spent in that space and the time that he gave to it. One of the things that we both kind of have some regret around are the people that we led into that space. I believe, it's a part of your journey. It's a part of your journey. If it resonates, it resonates. His sheep will hear his voice. You will hear the voice of the right shepherd at the right time. However, I, in some ways, was guiding women into that space as a remedy for the BS that they were experiencing in relationships in the world. And I know for a fact that they did not get less BS on that side of things. They actually probably got more, and it's harder to break out of it when it's under the banner of the Bible. So let's see. Honey L says that's good adaptation. Also, Christianity was not our ancestors' original spiritual means. Like, what was that? Questions like that wouldn't cool off in my mind. That is very true. And questions like that will get you kicked out of these spaces very quickly. So, Rilla Talk, hi, brother, says, salute, sis. After everything you've learned, comfortably and uncomfortably, what does a healthy community look like to you now? Oh, goodness. This is a good question. Healthy community for me now looks like people who are gathered together with a common moral ground, as well, and a common mission, as well as a common respect for each other's individual purposes, individual journeys, and individual destinies. When I say moral ground, I don't necessarily mean religious ground. When I talk about morality, I'm talking about how we treat each other, how we treat the earth, how we treat ourselves, not dogma. Do we read the same book? Do we all of that? Because that has kept us divided for way too long, and what it has done is connected us with people that we would not actually be in community with if it were not for this perceived commonality, because really you may not even have much in common other than what you quote unquote believe. So I hope that answered that question. Micro Maddie, hi, how are you? So good to see you. I'm so happy to hear that you trusted yourself to leave. Your discernment will never lead you wrong. I believe that. Beautiful Day said, did leaving this organization have to do with walking away from coaching as well? No, actually. Leaving the organization, I think that the spiritual journey that I have been on since has to do with me walking away from online coaching, because I still have private clients. I still host my retreats, and I still coach in those ways. But the online creating courses, hosting a program where I only have so much capacity as a person. And my journey is calling me toward what I know I'm meant to do, which is to sing, and to perform. Um, and I'm a mom of four. I'm a homeschool mom. I'm a wife. We have gardens. There's just so much that I couldn't keep pouring into the online space like that without having some kind of balance. And I feel fine about it. I think that, and this is no shade to my audience, I love y'all. My clients, y'all know for sure I love y'all. But being in that space and leaving that space did open my eyes to the fact that I do not like to be in spaces where I am being consumed. Um, I don't like to feel like I am in a space where I am only being consumed and not being replenished. And the online coaching space had become that for me. where I was just constantly talking to y'all and constantly teaching and constantly sharing and constantly doing this and constantly doing that. And there was this very much like being in I liken cults to relationships where a person is constantly telling you they're going to change, telling you they're going to improve, telling you they're going to, and they don't. And they're kind of saying that to influence you to stay, and they never really come around, but you keep going back. um the content, not content creation, because I do like that, but the online coaching and pouring space started to feel like that. Like, I got tired of, honestly, total transparency, I got so tired of hearing y'all say, oh yeah, yeah, I know I need to work with you, I know I need to get my life together, I know I need to XYZ. I'm coming, girl, I'm coming, for years on end. It just was too much. I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and make these songs for these people. Let me pour myself back into what fills me up so that I have more to give in the ways that I want to give. Because just because you can help somebody doesn't always mean that you should. Um, Especially if it is going to drain you. Just because you can help doesn't mean that you should. And I trust that when those of you who were like that, who were like, oh my God, girl, when I'm ready, when you're ready, the right teacher will be on your journey. But I just couldn't keep pouring like that. Let's see. Lane Tracy says, is the membership month to month? Yes, it is. Mighty Mouse says, what does your spiritual practice look like these days? Do you still read or follow the Bible? So I actually, let me see, I've written out the episodes, y'all. It's going to be like episode 4 or 5 that I talk about what I believe now. Yes, I do still read the Bible. Yes, I do still gain so much value from the scripture. Do I still follow the Bible? For the most part, yes. Mm-hmm. I don't follow the Hebrew Israelite interpretation of the Bible, which tells you that as a woman, you need to shut up when men are talking. You can't wear pants. You, like, there's just so much that is against women that I just don't agree with. It never did. Disruptor Coach says, this is exactly why I serve Christian women, because of the patriarchal view Christianity has abused them long enough. Exactly. And you know, the more that you study, the more that you dig deep, you will eventually come to when the patriarchy did not exist and society was run in a different way. And I'm not here to say that either way is right or wrong, but there does need to be some balance in the equation. Mm-hmm. And it cannot be this whole you're a woman, so you need to shut up, you're a woman, so you need to learn from men, all God only works through men, all the prophets are men, and all of this other stuff. That's just not true. It's just not true. If you cannot peel the onion back, it's not true. All right. And that's something that I wrestled with for a while we were there, but it's one of the reasons we never fully joined, because there were just too many things that I knew were not true, that we as a collective were being told, well, this is just the way it is, and this is just what God wants, and this is just uh what the scripture says, and all of these. And it was like, are we going to say Black, brown, these groups speak specifically to Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans, that these groups of people are oppressed by Europeans all over the world? But the answer and the solution is in this structure that has been given to us by these same oppressors. In this document that has been given to us, or that has been transformed and resold to us by the same oppressor. We see how politics works now. We see how political campaigns work in 2024. The King James translation of the Bible was his political campaign. Just start there. That was the campaign he was running on at the time. You don't think there's any agenda of his own that was weaved into this thing at all? Believe what you want. Charmaine says, I'm mad I missed the beginning of this. Well, the replay will be up and available for you. Oh, we've been on here a long time. No, y'all. I didn't want this to be a super long live. Do you have a schedule of when you'll be doing the follow-ups to this live stream? I do not. I don't. I'm thinking I kind of want to do it daily, but I'm like, do I really have the time to do it daily? I don't want it to be as spread out as weekly. So keep your eyes on my stories. And if you're on YouTube, keep your eyes on the community tab. Let's see. You're not the only coach I've heard say this. Yeah, I felt that, yeah, which is why I'm leaning into my creativity. Yes. Do you still observe feast days? Yes, we do. You are such a powerful woman, so I'm not surprised by it not sitting right with you. You know, there were times where whole rooms, because we did congregate with them for a minute, where the whole room of men could not figure out the solution to something, and a woman would have the solution or a possible solution and could not speak because I was a woman or because they were a woman. Could not approach the panel because you were a woman. You needed to write your question down and pass it forward and hope that someone answered the question, or ask your husband. And he would need to transfer the message to the brothers. Now, if anybody here has a husband, and I love my husband, sending a message through my husband is not exactly the most reliable way to get a message sent through any man, because their brains just pull out the big parts and they miss details. So, that was their protocol. And if that works for you, wonderful. I am not here to bash what works for anybody. If it works for you to be told as a woman, sit down, be quiet, don't say anything, let the men handle everything, girl, more power to you. I am more power on your journey. Okay. But that just did not work for me. Let me see. She said there's no sound. Oh no. Maybe my battery went out in the mic. Let me unplug this. Okay. Y'all should have sound again over here on Insta. And there should be sound on YouTube because I didn't have a mic plugged up over there. Okay, so what I have not been doing is looking at the questions on YouTube, and y'all have been over here talking. Rochelle said, as a non-Apple folk, that hits. Listen, it's its own little religion. It's its own little cult. Tashi Hutchins says you look great. Listen, I'm out here glowing with glistening in this Louisiana sun. Let's see. This conversation couldn't be more timely. Your transparency is always a blessing. I'm glad this is supporting you, Maya. Or Maya. Is that Maya over here? I can't see you in your little avatar. That's so real. Accountability for the top levels can be lacking for sure. And the closer you get to it, the more you are impacted. That is very true. And the more you see. let's see, in many of these spaces, the leadership is idolized, whether they want to say it or not, whether they want to admit the truth of it or not, they are idolizing the leader. When I left the cult I was in, it seems immediately that all the things I prayed for started coming to pass. That's a beautiful testimony to have, for sure. I will say that my whole life fell apart. Whole thing, whole thing, piece by piece. And I survived. I survived it. Maya says, bingo. I remember us having a similar conversation back in 2019 on a client call. Okay, it is Maya. On a client call. And it was so liberating knowing I wasn't going crazy, seeing some of the same things in that space. Exactly. And it was, in the client space, I had been having this conversation. So I'm not sure. You may need to go to YouTube. Hop over to the Feminine Success YouTube. Hold on, y'all, on YouTube. Feminine Success YouTube channel. Not Chanel girl. Okay. Okay. All right. So hop over to the Feminine Success YouTube channel. Okay. So I was having this conversation in the client space, but I never allowed myself to have it to my wider audience, because there was just so much. They really ostracize you, and they really do a number on being in your comments, just doing the most, being completely disrespectful and all of that. And I just didn't want to go there with people online, because I have a mouth on me and I can cut straight to the chase. So it's like, I've worked too hard to let it all go down the drain over some ignorant fools who are just stagnant on their spiritual walk. Man, rebuilding your life after walking away from these organizations is much more complex than it sounds. It really is much more complex than it sounds. I know people who their whole business is crumbled as soon as they walked away, because they have been building their business inside of that space. I know people who will not walk away from that space because their businesses will suffer, because their spouse is so committed to it, because their family is there and they're afraid of, losing their family. So trust me, it is a lot more complicated than it sounds. What has reconstruction of my belief process been like? I have not reconstructed belief because I never stopped believing. I just don't believe that I need an organization or group to be my liaison in my spiritual journey. Okay. Sharice, I see that you're requesting to join the live, but I'm seeing that no one can hear me over here. So I'm kind of telling y'all to go to YouTube. And is there like a join button on YouTube? I don't think so. But let's see. No, there isn't one. And I'm not on StreamYard today. Let's see. So it hasn't necessarily been me reconstructing my beliefs. It has been me going deeper in my journey of knowing God. Knowing God within myself, knowing God within life, knowing God and seeing God within others, seeing God in every situation, including situations that are uncomfortable. It's been that kind of a journey, more so than like, oh, now I don't believe, now I've lost faith, and now I need to rebuild my faith. One thing about being a scorpionic person is that we are naturally suspicious of just about everything. And so um, I do not, I don't want to say I don't have faith in people. I don't hinge my faith on people. So if I lose faith in a person, I don't lose my faith. Because we are all humans. People are going to disappoint you. People are going to say they believe one thing or say they do one thing and then do another. It's natural. So I didn't go through that reconstruction period in that way. I did have to learn to trust myself, learn to trust my own knowing, because you are, through biblical teaching, taught so often to not lean on your own understanding, to not lean on what you know, to not trust your intuition, to not, these are like tenets. And I couldn't do that anymore. But I also, because it had been drilled into me so long, I also struggled with that for a while. Like, am I wrong for leaning on my own understanding? Am I wrong for studying on my own? Am I wrong for going deeper into this? Am I wrong for asking these questions? But I mean, when you see real wrong happening, you have to at some point tell yourself the truth. No, I am not wrong for asking a question, but this man that's beating his wife and children over here, that is actually wrong. This man who is stealing from his congregation, that is actually wrong. And I had to get to the point where I uh, grew up in my morality, grew up in my spiritual sense, and stopped um, allowing myself to follow the crowd in that way, and in saying, well, you know, it's the man of God, and nobody's perfect, and we all sin and fall short, and all of these things, when it's a pattern of behavior. And I get to choose whether or not I want that pattern leading me. Like, I'm not telling you need to stop your behavior or whatever have you. Do what you feel is right for you, but I don't want it leading me. um Jihad Muhammad says many religions exist, so your soul is going to travel into its own place of comfort. So, are you on a spiritual journey again? I am, and I believe that we are. When we allow ourselves to be, we're always on a spiritual journey. The spirit is not necessarily seeking. The soul also is not seeking uh worldly safety. It's not seeking it understands that there's a safety and a security beyond the tangible. And so the soul may be seeking a lesson in those groups. It may be seeking growth. It may be seeking the next step on its journey in these religions and organizations, but it's not seeking to stay in any place at any time. That's why it doesn't stay in this body. So yeah. Jihad Muhammad now asks, if one is enslaved, then they intend to enslave those around them. So how do you break those chains on those that had only followed through you? I cannot. All that I can do is share where I am now on the journey and hope that they do what is right for them at the moment. I don't look at my time with that organization as me being enslaved. I look at it as a point a pit stop that I needed on my journey. But you can stay at a pit stop too long. So I was not seeking to enslave others, but you know, if you are a part of an oppressive system and you're welcoming other people into that system, not realizing that it's oppressive, then naturally they're now in an oppressive system. The thing about it is, a lot of the women that I guided and supported into that decision, they are still fine with where they are. So, and then another good portion of them left a long time ago and were like, you know what, this ain't for me. So for the ones who are still there, when their time to take that next step on their journey comes, they will do that. I trust that. Okay, Selena says we can hear you on YouTube. Wonderful. If you cannot hear me on, let me actually pin this because people are still popping on Insta. If you can't hear me on Insta, pop over to YouTube. Let's see. That explains why your husband was on each live. He wanted that smoke. I guess my husband just likes looking at me, honestly. He really is like, he'll be sitting right next to me and be on my Instagram page looking at my pictures or in my stories looking at me, and he just likes looking at me. He actually does not like the smoke. um Dr. Evangel says, I'm in that same journey. I have left everything to study and know God for myself. The heart is deceptively wicked. You know what? That is a scripture. And the heart is a lot of things. The heart is a lot of things. Yes, the heart can be deceptive. Yes, it can be wicked. It can also be pure. It can also be full of light. It can also be one of the greatest guides that we have in this lifetime. So, you know, it's up to you to decide what you're going to tap into when it comes to your heart. House of Transformation says, talk the truth. That's been the journey for me too. Thank you for sharing this. You are welcome. Jahad Muhammad says, thank you for digging into the question. You said after the first 4 years, a red light popped on. Why did you stay for more? Your integrity and accountability speaks volumes. Well, I thank you so much, House of Transformation, for saying that. I appreciate that. Jahad Muhammad, why did I stay 4 more years? Because honestly, my husband wasn't ready to leave. He had not seen what he needed to see. My husband, and you know, we all love my husband. Y'all know him if you've been around for any amount of time. And I'm not saying anything to y'all that I have not and will not say with him standing right here. My husband, like many men, can be the type of person who, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And sometimes needs to feel the snake bite in order to believe that the snake is a snake. And so that's why. I'll get deeper into that. But overall, that's why. My husband was not ready to leave. He hadn't seen what he needed to see. He was not fully committed, like, I want to become a member, but he was also like, well, but we're learning, I am a person who, I don't like hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. It feels like information is being hidden from me. It feels like a person does not want you to progress past a certain level when they keep teaching you down at this level. And when you ask higher level questions, they tell you you're not ready for the meat yet. You still need the milk and all of those kinds of things. I just, no. And so for the person who was like, you know, when I left the organization, things started to fall into place that you have been praying for. Spiritual things that I have been praying on and praying for definitely started to come like this. But the material reality of my life, some of the relationships that we had, the foundation and the group and the order and all of that fell apart completely. And that felt like, well, this is the rock that my life is built upon and all of those things. But again, If you are truly built upon a firm foundation, then when it all falls apart, that foundation is still there. So, let's see. Jahad Muhammad says, my second question was not answered about how the cult cut you off from family and friends. How do you reconnect with such people and create healing? Okay, so that should be a conversation that I have too. But they basically tell you that if you still even need to be connected to your family that does not believe or does not walk this walk, then it is because you are wicked as hell and they are wicked as hell, and birds of a feather flock together, basically. And so there is this kind of like, if you are really a believer, if you really are for God, then you are not dealing with anybody who does not find God in this way. Very much like many Christians feel like if that Christianity is the road to God. That is not true. That is a road to God. It is not the road. It's just not true. There's no other way to slice that. How did I rebuild those relationships? I can honestly say for me, I didn't really stop being friends with anybody that I was friends with before that I truly had strong friendships with. I didn't leave any of my truly strong friendships, but also I am the kind of person, and I have friendships where we don't talk all the time. Like we could go years without talking and then pick up the phone and we're talking again and like nothing ever happened. So that family members who I lost relationships with, the relationship was really toxic anyways. Family members who I had strong healthy relationships with, I still have strong healthy relationships with. I will more than likely through this series be bringing on other women who have had more extreme experiences with kind of like cutting family members off and things like that. But I've always been a cutter offer if the relationship is toxic for me. So what I'll say is any relationships that I don't have now, the organization might have like got me over the hump of finally cutting that relationship off, but the organization is not why that relationship doesn't exist. So that's that. Let's see. Are there any other questions over here on Insta? No, I don't see any more. So I am going to, yeah, because we're almost at 2 hours. I'm going to cut it off here. Hopefully, this has laid a good foundation for those of you who were ready to have this conversation. I know I have been ready to have this conversation for a while. I still don't feel ready, but but I have been ready for somebody to say something, to speak for those of us who are walking away from organized religion and also going deeper in our spiritual journeys at the same time. Because so often people try to frame it as if like you're walking away from organization, you're walking away from this group, you're walking away from God, you're walking away, you're not labeling yourself anymore. That means you're not calling yourself, and none of that is real. So I wanted to have the conversation from a real perspective, and just, open the floor for more of us to talk about it. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Jihad asks how my husband is redefining his adjustment, and he will more than likely be on episode 3 to talk about why we stayed for so long, what all of that, and what it's like for him now. All right, so stay tuned, y'all. I hope this has been helpful, and that you find more light on your path. Peace and love, y'all.